How's it going, Toons of the World? It is your pal Mega Snoop bringing you another Toontastic video. And in today's video, I wanted to go over something I get asked a lot. And that is, can you help me with the little old man task? Now, I wish I could go out and help every single one of you guys with every single part of the task, but I don't have the manpower to do that. I swear, there's always at least one viewer of mine who is on this task at any given time. So instead of being on Toontown every single second of the day helping somebody at every single second of my time, I'm going to make this video instead and give you some pointers of the best way to complete this task on your own. Now, first and foremost, before I get into anything else, the number one tip I have is train your gags. If you have good gags, it's going to help you a lot more. You're going to be able to do more on your own instead of having to rely on other toons. However, this isn't always the case, so I'll try to provide some other options as well. The very first thing you do is visit Little Old Man in his building called the Blizzard Wizard, which is towards the end of Walrus Way and the Berg. And the very first thing he will ask you to do is either retrieve 6 caviar from Mr. Hollywood's or 6 lumpy cheeses from the Big Cheese. It's really an RNG depending on which one you're gonna get, so I can't say for sure if you're going to get the Hollywoods or the Big Cheeses because you're a duck, or because you're a big toon, or because you're doing it on a Monday. It strictly comes down to randomness. On my toon, Mega Snoop Jr., I had to get 6 lumpy cheeses from the Big Cheese. Before you start anything, the first thing you're gonna wanna do is search for an invasion. If there's an invasion going with the cog you need, you've basically struck the gold mine, the jackpot of Toontown, easiest task in the world. So before you even go to any street, pick any gag, check the districts, check toonhq.org, see if there's an invasion that meets the cog you need. Otherwise, for instance with the Big Cheese, what you can do is make sure you're stocked up on gags and head to Walrus Way. Walrus Way is the most boss spot populated street with the highest level cogs since Donald's Dock. If you find a decent sized building on the street, you can guarantee at least a level 8 or a 9 as a boss. Sometimes even higher. So the probability of finding a Big Cheese is very high. Now know that the recovery rate for the lumpy cheeses is medium, which means not every single one of the Big Cheeses is gonna give you a lumpy cheese. In fact, it's about 50%. So you may have to defeat upwards of 12 Big Cheeses in order to get all the lumpy cheese. And this is what puts the strain on people, is that it's really hard to find Big Cheeses. As you can see in this example, I run onto the street, I find a 4-story building, I get some toons to help me, and we're off. It will take several buildings to accomplish this if you try to go through this way, but this is the easiest way to do it. These are the easiest buildings to find that you will find some easy Big Cheeses. Now there are some boss spot buildings in Donald's Dreamland, however they are typically only found on Lullaby Lane, and Lullaby Lane only has a 25% boss spot rate, which means you could be searching up and down the street for a building that might not be there. On the other side, you're going to need 6 caviar from a Mr. Hollywood. In order to do this, I would suggest the best way is to go to Sleet Street in the Berg. Sleet Street has a 40% sellbot and has a better chance of finding a sellbot building than any other building. Now if your gags are high enough and you do have a sellbot suit, you can attempt to fight the VP. Because there are several high-level cogs, including level 12s, which are automatically Mr. Hollywoods. So every single time you run through a VP, you are guaranteed at least 2 Mr. Hollywoods, and you will probably get upwards of 6. However, if you do not have very high gags, for instance max throw, max squirt, max sound, maybe even max lure, I would not recommend doing this, because otherwise you're the tiny toon in the lobby who's trying to beg all the big toons to bring you along, and that's when you get teased and ridiculed and no one's gonna bring you. Know your limits, kids. Once you've completed all of your caviar or Big Cheese, you're gonna return to Little Old Man. He's then either going to request you to bring him either a simple spoon from the Big Wigs or a simple spoon from the Robber Barons. Now from my research, apparently recovering it from the Robber Barons is a bit more difficult. I'm not sure why. So if you do get that, it might take you a little bit longer. But otherwise, it's going to be about 50%. Once again, check if there's an invasion. Mega Snoop Jr. was fortunate enough to have a bigwig invasion during this time, which he was able to teleport and get the simple spoon really quickly. This is why you check, because sometimes you get lucky. Now if that wasn't the case, The easiest place to find a bigwig would be Polar Place. Once again, you still don't need to leave the burg. And if you go to a populated district, there's almost always some toons on the street looking to do a building. Now, if you need it from the robber barons, this is where things get a little more tricky, and I do apologize ahead of time because it's not going to be easy. If your gags are high enough, like I mentioned before, you can wander into Donald's Dreamland and take on one of the 5-story buildings on Pajama Place. This would be the easiest way to find a robber baron. But again, if you're a low toon with low gags, people probably aren't going to bring you along. So in which case, I would suggest you go to one of the previous playgrounds. Go to Minnie's Melodyland on Baritone Boulevard, where there's a lot of cash bot buildings. Look for a 3 or 4-story building. You have a better chance of finding a robber baron there. Even in Donald's Dock on Seaweed Street, there are some 3 and 4-story buildings there that will also have a good chance of finding a robber baron. Please do not go to Cashbot HQ looking to do a coin mint, because people are not going to bring you. Unless maybe you have max sound, but in which case, mostly, they won't do it. Now once you've recovered the simple spoon and you return to Little Old Man, he's going to ask you to find a talking toad by fishing. Now this is probably the easiest part of the task, because all you need to do is leave the Blizzard Wizard, take a hard right, and there's a pond right there. It literally took me just a few fish to find it. It's not very hard, you're going to get it done in a matter of minutes, even seconds, and return it, and you're moving on to the next part. Little Old Man is now going to request that you go see Sticky George at the Melting Ice Cream Bar. It's still on the same street, you just gotta go back towards the beginning, right behind the HQ, you'll see it. This is where things start to look a little up. Sticky George is going to ask you to recover 10 ice cream cones from either the Big Cheeses or the Mr. Hollywoods. Now here's the beauty of this part of the task, is that although it's a recovery task, the drop rate for ice cream cones is perfect, which means no matter which Big Cheese you fight or which Mr. Hollywood you fight, no matter where it is at any time, you will get an ice cream cone from it. You can never not get an ice cream cone from fighting one of these cogs. So if you get 10 ice cream cones from the Big Cheeses, think of the task as 10 Big Cheeses. If you need 10 ice cream cones from Mr. Hollywoods, think of it as 10 Mr. Hollywoods. And once again, I told you the best place to find these cogs already. Big Cheeses, Walrus Way, buildings. Mr. Hollywoods, Sleet Street, buildings. And if you have good enough gags, you can do a couple VPs if you'd like, but only if you have good enough gags. Once you recover 10, you can go back and talk to Sticky George, and he will give you the 10 ice cream cones to deliver back to Little Old Man. Then you go back to Little Old Man, and Little Old Man will request another thing of you. I know, it's kind of annoying, isn't it? Little Old Man is going to either want some wig powder from the Big Wigs, or some makeup powder from Mr. Hollywoods. Now again, this is getting a little repetitious. I've already discussed the best place to find both of these cogs. Big Wigs you can find easily on Polar Place. Mr. Hollywoods on Sleet Street, or doing a VP if you have good enough gags. You will have to defeat a number of these cogs probably, because the recovery rate is low. You're looking at having to defeat probably about 5 of these cogs before you get it. Once you get that, you can return to Little Old Man, and this is where people tend to be stingy. When Little Old Man requests you to do 24 plus story buildings. And here's the ticket, guys. This is probably the point of the task that everybody comes to me with. Help me with buildings, help me with buildings, help me with buildings. This is probably one of the easiest parts of the tasks. You guys do not understand. But why is this easier? Because of one key element that most people just overlook. These buildings can be anywhere. Most people are running around the burg trying to find people to do buildings with them with really terrible gags, dying on floor 3, or even going to Donald's Dreamland trying to beg higher toons to bring them on their 5-story cashbot buildings. You do realize that in comparison to the previous playgrounds, you are a big toon, and there are toons in those previous playgrounds that need help going through those buildings. This does say anywhere, which means you can go to Minnie's Melodyland, you can go to Daisy's Garden, you can go to Donald's Dock, and there are plenty of 4-story buildings there that are not as difficult as the ones in the Burg or in Donald's Dreamland. You will fight lower level cogs, you will have help from the other toons there who need these for tasks, and you're not going to be stressing out trying to fight big cogs and big buildings with little gags. So the first thing I would do is search for an invasion district, preferably a lower one. You find some cold callers, penny pinchers, something along that line. Therefore you know that the building is going to be capped at a certain cog level. For instance, penny pinchers can never be higher than a level 6. And a 4-story building with The highest cog being level 6. If you have decent enough gags, you can do that by yourself. It's incredible. So I would suggest looking on the following streets. In Donald's Dock, Lighthouse Lane, and Seaweed Street. In Daisy's Garden, Oak Street, and Maple Street. And in Minnie's Melodyland, Baritone Boulevard, and Tenor Terrace. The reason why I don't tell you to look on the streets connecting to Toontown Central is that they might have buildings that are 4-story, but usually they do not, and I don't want you wasting your time looking down a street just to find no buildings. The height of a building is based off of the level of the cog that takes it over. And on those streets, the highest level cog that can be found on the street is a level 4, and a level 4 cannot create a 4-story building. So if there is a 4-story building on those streets, it's probably because there was an invasion recently with higher level cogs, and those took over the buildings. Now this isn't going to be quick, it is going to be tedious, it is going to be long, but you will have a much better time doing these types of buildings as opposed to the ones that are in the Berg and Donald's Dreamland. So gather some friends, maybe find somebody else who's working on the task, spend a few hours doing this, but if you literally sit down and do this straight, you can get it done in under 4 hours. So that might be a couple days for you, only playing a couple hours a day, but it's definitely not as bad as some people make it out to be. The whole task in general might not take you any more than 6 to 8 hours. So you could do it in a whole day if you wanted to, but if you play every day for a decent amount, it won't take you longer than a week. It's supposed to be a really hard task for a reason. He's granting you your final gag track, and he wants you to earn it. So keep that in mind, okay? Once you finish the 24-story buildings, you return to the little old man, and the last thing he'll ask you to do is fish out another toad, which I literally did on my second try, so again, not difficult, don't worry about it. Return it to him, and he grants you the final gag track. So those are my guidelines and tips for helping you through the little old man task. Hopefully you learned something new, hopefully this helps some of you out. I know a lot of you who are watching are probably past this, but if you ever decide to make a new tune and you're going through the game again and you hit the little old man task, just think back to this. Maybe it'll give you some tips and pointers so you're not stressing out so much. I really hope you guys did enjoy. Thank you for stopping in. Let me know if you guys have any additional tips down in the comment section below. My name is Mega Snoop, and I will see you guys next time. Hope y'all enjoyed, and if you did, be sure to smash that like button. It helps me know that my work is appreciated. Leave a comment and subscribe if you're new. You can check out my live stream at twitch.tv/Megasnoop. Follow me on Twitter at MegasnoopTTR, and I hope y'all have a toontastic day.